Welcome to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. Discover your life's purpose, reprogram your mind for success, and attract an abundance of paying clients to your business. Now, here's your host, Tom Tenaglia.
Aloha, Empowered Entrepreneur. I am Tom Tenaglia, and you're listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. And in this episode, I want to go over 3 different sales approaches that I noticed from 3 different companies when I was wanting to solve a problem. And I was buying a couple of different products that the marketing looked great, and I didn't know if the product would deliver. And the reason why I want to go over this is because the sales approaches were vastly different. And I only ended up signing up for a higher end, back end offer for one of them. And ironically, it was the one that took a much more hands-off sales approach. So one of the products that I had purchased, it was just a few dollars. It was like an entry-level product, and I had seen this particular large company, or at least large in terms of sales volume, kind of all over the internet. They definitely spent a lot of money on advertising and have a huge community. And I'm like, okay, let me try them out. And as soon as I had done that, I had actually bought a couple of entry-level products from them at different times. And I was basically, my phone started ringing, and I started getting a bunch of emails. I started getting text messages, all from them. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, if you're there listening to me and you're thinking, well, why did he give his real phone number? Why did he give his real email address? Well, the company that got my business, it's how they handled all that information that'll surprise you. So we'll get there. So this particular company, though, the one who I chose not to do business with, and even more so, what I did was I ended up looking up, their sales approach was so just in my face that I'm like, look, I didn't even get to use this thing that I bought from you. Like, I'm thinking in my head, like, give me a chance. Like, I'm a busy guy. I'm not just out there looking to buy stuff, right? I got a ton of stuff on my to-do list, and the last thing that I want is an unscheduled phone call, especially from a sales team. So it got to be a certain point where I responded stop to the text messages, because the phone company, phone systems, whatever they're using, have to honor that keyword. And I would get text messages from other phone numbers from them. And I'm like, wait a minute, how many are they using? I'm like, this is ridiculous. So then I even looked up online. This is the effort I put into it. And there's a point here, really. But I looked up online what system they were using. And then I found for both the outbound phone calls, because they even switched outbound phone call numbers, and their text numbers were different from their phone number. And I'm like, oh my God, what are they doing? They're just trying to escape one person from saying, please don't call me, by using 8 different methods. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I would highly suggest they probably talk to legal counsel, because it could even be illegal. So I went to the company who they were using to do this, and I searched their do not call information, and I put my phone number in there, and it gave me a big warning. It said, if you enter your phone number here, any customer of ours that uses our system won't be able to contact you. And I'm like, sweet, submit. And that's what I did. And I blacklisted my phone number in their system. And basically, I even looked in their documentation to see, hey, what if somebody's on the do not call list? Whether it's the international one, whether it's the local company one, or whether it's the platform one. And they had appropriate methods to handle that. So if you were on the company, the individual company one, they could put you on the list or take you off the list. But if you were on the the national one, I believe, or if somebody had specifically requested the company take you off, then you're blacklisted, and no customer of theirs could call your phone number. Now, of course, they could use some other phone, but it basically says, leave me alone, right? The effort of doing that, because here's the thing, that outreach sales process is not how I like to do business. That outreach sales process told me exactly how those sales calls are going to go. And I could have gotten on one, just to see if I was right. But why would I do that? I've had numerous sales calls in the past where I've been able to tell from how the sales team reaches out and how they interact with you prior directly relates to how they are on the phone with you. So I said, forget it. So the first one, so that example then was I was actively spending time on getting the sales team to stop contacting me. The second one was I'd purchased a nice front end offer, a few dollars, and the guy had just a few email follow-ups, which was great because I think I read most of them because he wasn't messaging me every day. It was just every few days, and it was more around getting me to consume the content and providing results that his customers had gotten from consuming the content that I had purchased, which is great. And then he had a live webinar, and live webinar funnels, I understand, so I'm like, okay, cool. What's this gonna do? Is this even gonna deliver value? Is it going to, is it gonna lead to a purchase or lead to an appointment? I couldn't attend the webinar live. They sent out a recording, and I kind of skipped ahead a little bit, if I recall, and I kind of listened to what the content was and the value, and he was delivering value, and he had a very specific, because I know enough about business and marketing to understand that he had a very specific point that he was conveying in the value of what he was teaching. I'm like, okay. His call to action was a 10-minute appointment. And I scheduled the 10-minute appointment. I'm like, well, he's not really, I do hour-and-a-half calls minimum for my astrology clients and stuff like that. So I'm like, how much is he going to be able to understand about my business in 10 minutes? I have no idea. So I told him a little bit about the problem. And instead of demonstrating that he understood my problem, because I don't know that he did, he started giving me an offer that there was a large upfront investment and then an ongoing investment that was 4 figures each month. And I'm like, wait a minute. I also told him that I didn't want more content, and I didn't want to pay for more content because I told him that up front, because I'm like, I have way too much content. I make content. Like, I don't need more content. I need help. And the help was there that wasn't, it was group help. It was at scheduled times. And I was like, okay, that isn't gonna work for me. I have a busy schedule. I'm not going to be able to conform to this. The option where he just kind of did everything for me, was prohibitive in price, for me at least. And, he was clear on where certain things were in the process. And I actually really wanted to do business with him. So I asked him to send me a contract because I could aim toward a goal of being able to do business with him. I did want to. But the reason why I didn't will become obvious with the third company that I talked to. So the third company, they had been sending emails for a while. I think they were going into my, the email system was just filtering them out. I don't think I had set anything up for it. I just wasn't seeing them. And I didn't really think anything of it. But then I started going through the product that I had purchased about about 6 or 7 months ago. I thought it was a year and a half ago, but I think it was only a half a year ago. And I really liked what they were doing, and I liked the marketing behind it and what they were doing, and the value that was in the few dollar purchase. Actually, I believe it was a little bit more than just a couple dollars, because they were adding in additional content, and the value was there. So okay, so I didn't really see their emails. Their call to action was to schedule a call with them, and it was an hour, like scheduled for an hour. I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is interesting that it's an hour-long call. Well, my call with the sales team, the sales salesperson there actually went 2.5 hours because what they were asking for in terms of financial investment was significant. It was in between the low end offer and the higher end offer of the second company. But I needed to understand a few things, and I needed to ask a bunch of questions. And while there were some things that I think the sales team did take a little bit of liberty in, I do think that the time that was spent in addressing my questions was well spent, and I ended up doing business with them. So the interesting thing about that then is the whole reason why I didn't do business with the first company is because of how their sales team was so in my opinion, pushy. Oh, I didn't even get on the phone with them. Yeah. Because of, I'm sorry, but if I'm going to get a phone call, a text message, and an email at the same time, multiple times a day, and then I send stop to one and I get one from a different phone number, I think they do it under the guise of a different sales representative. But come on, guys, I'm saying stop to the company, not stop to the sales representative. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do business, right? So that was enough. But that's the reason. The second one, again, the offer pricing wasn't right. I wasn't getting my individualized help, and it was too short of a sales call to have him really understand what the heck I was going through. The third one spent more time with me. Also had an option. Really, the bulk in that extra money that I was paying for that offer was because of one-on-one calls, in addition to group calls, in addition to being able to get questions answered in a group call, even if I couldn't make it. But those one-on-one calls were huge for me, all right? And I'm still in the process of leveraging them, okay? And so somebody who took the time, to truly understand where I'm at, my situation, what's going on, worked with me on a solution. Now, like I said, I think he did take some liberty in certain areas. I think the call could have gone a lot faster if we were able to come to certain conclusions earlier. But ultimately, what did it do? Ultimately, it showed me what's possible, and it showed me that if this sales team is going to take the time and demonstrate, an understanding of the situation, and he did eventually propose an option that I really wanted to take. And once I finally understood the reason why he was suggesting the approach he was suggesting, then I took it on faith that a particular purchase at that particular time was great. Then ironically, I went and looked at the astrology of it and realized a certain important transit going on in my life at the time. And I'm like, wait a minute, I should have just seen this first. Because now I know. Because again, I always say, if you follow the chart, the path unfolds. So this turning point was that purchase. And now there's a period of time before I'll see the fruits of that purchase. But again, the nature of the three different sales approaches. So whether you're going to be outreaching to previous customers, whether you're going to wait for them to schedule inbound calls, it's a key decision to make in your business. Okay. The pricing model is going to be a key decision in your business, and what you provide. The other thing is the content of the second company didn't go into as much thinking as the content that the third company went into. So they actually talk about the thinking behind the methods. Because I don't need another, okay, here's how you use the tech, or here's how you do some sort of marketing. No, I was looking for very specific business-related ways of thinking. Okay? And so this really got me thinking, actually. It got me to realize, wait a minute, what kind of business processes do you want? Do you want because here's the thing. I think the outreach people, most likely, a portion of it is just, they know their closing numbers, in terms of how many people that they get on the phone with do they close into some sort of program. But everything that the third company does is very strategic. And the information that I'm learning from them is extremely strategic. And that's the stuff I was looking for. And so it got me to think, okay, how you craft all these things, how you think through, okay, what's your customer experience like? And what's the pricing model going to be? Because here's the other thing. The group calls of the program I did purchase, as long as they continue to run the program, the group calls are included. The one-on-one calls do end after a certain number of them, which is understandable. Plus, their program is meant to teach you enough so that you're not dependent on it. And so the fact that the group calls continued and I could always submit questions was also a key determining factor. These all go into factoring into the value of the offer, what they were giving me for what they were asking for. Sometimes we craft offers and pricing structures based on what we think our business needs are. Yes, they have to be profitable. If the second company wasn't able to run the group calls, long term, then okay, maybe they need to charge a monthly retainer, so to speak. But what the third company does is they're still putting people into the program. And so those people that come into the program each week basically are effectively funding those group calls to continue for the benefit of everyone else. Plus, the irony about that is once you get going, you probably don't need those calls anymore. So factoring in, it comes down to, well, hey, if you have a 365-day refund policy versus a 30-day refund policy, you may actually see fewer refunds with the 365. Because by that time people, it's like they don't need the refund anymore. I've seen a couple of things. You have to know the cycles in your business, because I've seen people that, for example, the holidays come and then all of a sudden they just start refunding anything that's still within an eligible refund period. But honestly, that can get factored into your ideal customer avatar, because, if you don't want people to do that, then just factor that into the avatar and the avatar can filter them out. It is okay to filter potential prospects. It is okay to filter those that you would want into your business. I don't take I've had people call me up and they just like, hey, I want to give you what you charge for blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not that I don't say that I don't want to work with them, but I just go, I'm going to decline the business. And it's not that I don't want to work with them. It's that they don't fit the type of customer that I think is ideal for the business that I have. Do I want to help them? Sure. And I usually am able to still help them. Either I can give some information or I can point them to somebody else who may have a better offer for their particular problem and the thing that they're solving. So it's okay to filter people out. I hear more problems from entrepreneurs that take customers that they shouldn't have, and they realize, wait a minute, this isn't who I want to work with. Then I hear from people who take customers that they do want to work with, obviously, because those who get customers that they don't want to work with, those are the ones that they usually end up talking about. And the irony is, as we mentioned before, if you talk about the customers that you didn't want to work with and you say that you do work with them, you might even draw up some referrals of that customer type, because that's what happened to one of my clients. And then she called me and she said, why am I getting all these referrals of the customer type that I don't want? I told such and such that this is the type of customer. I've worked with them and now they're sending me people. I'm like, well, that's why. That's why they're sending you that type of customer, because you told them you work with them. It's like, well, I didn't mean I only wanted to work with them. I'm like, well, then you got to get into thinking this all through. So each of these business models, can it work? Sure. But they're going to attract very different customers. I actually think, I would leave you with that, right? Think through, okay, if you're creating an offer, you're creating a payment structure, creating, your sales team approach, or you doing sales, your approach, what does that translate to into the type of customer that you want to attract into your business? Okay. If you're looking for go-getter entrepreneurs, for example, then maybe you want the entrepreneur to schedule a call with you. If you're looking for the entrepreneur to pay attention to what you're saying, maybe you do need to spend more time with them on a sales call. Look, I believe the company that I went with, I believe that they didn't have any problem saying that the call was an hour and then going 2.5 hours, because they knew I was already pre-qualified from everything else that I had gone through in their process. Their filtering process is so solid. They don't have to resort to, hey, I want to just talk to everybody who buys my front end offer. They don't want to talk to everybody who buys their front end offer. They're not just trying to get the sale. That's not, kind of the approach that I would want to take. And knowing your business, knowing the types of customers that, you want to attract. Look, I wouldn't have minded if that first company maybe waited a week and then said, sent me a text, hey, I just want to see, have you gone through such and such a product that you purchased? I would have responded with, no, not yet. I need more time. And if they were actively looking at those messages, I would have actually interacted with them, in that fashion, especially text. And so I appreciate your time, taking the time to listen to this podcast. I mean, it's time out of your day. Now, maybe you're doing other things while listening to it, but I mean, I know how I am when there's content to go through, or there's phone calls to have, or there's, texts to respond to, and clients to take care of, and businesses to build, right? And, all of that, it's like there's not enough hours in the day, but there are. There are. It's just maximizing the effectiveness of each minute. And so I really wanted to share those approaches with you, because it's not that any of them are bad. It's not that any of those 3 approaches were bad. It's not that all of them were good. It's just, which one do you want for your business, and how does that relate to the type of customer that you want to attract? And really, by thinking through that, I rather have my customers say, "Yep, I'm ready to talk to you." That's what I would rather they do. Okay, I would rather that's what they do. And so, could I do better I'm working on a couple of new offers in my business, and when I have them together, I'll be mentioning them on the podcast. And so this way I can start putting some calls to action in here. This way, if you want help in your business in certain ways, I can definitely help. And so, you can always email support@empoweredentrepreneurshow.com, and we can take a look at that if you really need to get in touch with us, or if you want to hop on a call, and just to see where I can help. And so it's all good. It's just making sure that your business processes, they're going to create a brand effectively. And so you want to think through the type of customer that you want to attract. And you don't just want to, I can't say you don't just want to do certain processes. You have to think through, what is important for your business? What does your business represent? And what are the types of customers that you want in your business? And then put processes in place around that. Each of those 3 sales processes, sales approaches, are speaking to a different customer avatar. I actually think I was guy number 2's avatar. I just think that his offer and his pricing structure didn't line up with what I actually wanted, right? And so I couldn't execute on it. The third company found a way to make it work for me, and then ultimately I realized the value in what they were doing, and I just took it on faith. But in order for guy number 2 to get me to a point where I could take it on faith, he would have had to have spent a lot more time with me, which is what company number 3 did. Interestingly enough, guy number 2 is the owner of the business. Guy number 3 was a sales guy for the owner of the business. If that doesn't speak volumes, right? Which is different than just hiring people to talk to potential customers through outbound phone calls, which is what company number 1 was doing, which is a very, very different sales process. So again, really think through how, what is the implication that your business processes have on the type of customer that you want to attract into it. Okay? Because again, those business processes, the pricing structure, guarantees, if any, whatever you do, it's going to speak to a particular avatar. And I got all of my questions answered. Again, I think he did take some liberty on a few of them, but in hindsight, I can understand why. I personally wouldn't have taken that liberty. I would have been a bit more direct in my answers to some of the questions, because even me, I find myself with a little bit of, buyer's remorse, just a little bit. And that's only because I felt like I didn't get the full story on a couple of details from the sales team. I don't regret the purchase, but I do want to do better for my customers. And so that's the thing. It kind of just had not a buyer's remorse from a product purchase perspective, because I'm very happy with the purchase, but more from I don't know if I can fully trust this guy, because there were a couple of things that I think he took liberty on in the way that he answered them. And now I'm hesitant about, so it's not buyer's remorse per se from an offer perspective. It's, I don't know that integrity is as there with him as I thought it might have been early on. Because then I asked the person who did my onboarding the same questions and I got different answers. And so I'm like, well, okay, then, one of them isn't right. Well, then I go into the program itself and I look at some of the content. I'm like, okay, the onboarding person was the one that was accurate. And I'm like, okay. So then I don't know. So I don't want to be that way. The good thing about guy number 2, when I gave him very direct questions, he gave me very direct answers. And he even said, I want to be, he basically said, I want to be clear, if you, with this particular model, yeah, there's this much required up front, but there's nothing that's going to be generating a return yet, because at that, it's just for the worker to create the content. We haven't even done, any sort of promotion on the content. So he was very clear with me that the upfront investment, it was going to require the upfront investment and more before I would see a return on it. And I appreciate that. Okay. The third company, that wasn't the offer I was buying from them. They had an offer like that too. I was buying a different offer. So the question there, right? It's like, so you see what I mean? So I can go and say, okay, I don't want to do outbound phone calls like company number 1. I do want the integrity of company number 2, and I want greater pricing structure, because even company number 3 had I think we could do better on the pricing model, and actually take the time with the customer that I think company number 3 did really, really well with. And so I can look at each of those 3 experiences and I come up with, what do I want for my company? You see? So now I know a lot of detail on how to structure these things, and how the very nature of the offer or the pricing structure or the time you spend with somebody, could does directly relate to the type of customer you want to attract. Company number 2, yeah, you're talking to a CEO of somebody who's already doing 6 or 7 figures business. Fine, 10-minute call. Here's my problem. Here's the solution. Sure. Here's the money. Blah, blah, done. Company number 3 was working with where I'm at, which there was we're working kind of that, just a nuance within that space. I'm not saying that a 6 or 7 figure business wouldn't do company 3. Of course they would. Okay. Cause obviously. So, they would, the call could just be faster than an hour, but I think the nature of it is you need to have that opportunity to actually connect and to build a connection. Now, you might look at company 3 and you might be like, well, they got the sale, so wasn't that the point? I don't know. Was it? I don't know, because to me, who we bring into my business as a customer is so much more than just getting the sale. There's a level of values that they're going to end up having, or they're going to end up developing through the products and services and offers that I make. Okay. And so what's interesting is because the community. So I'm in the community of company number 1, community company number 3, company number 1 because obviously I bought a front end offer, but I'm also in some other higher end communities that their offers were 4 figures, right? And then whereas the company that I purchased something from was 5 figures, there is a noticeable difference in the way the communities operate. Noticeable difference. So even though company number 3's founder has employees that pretty much do everything, or contractors that do everything, he's still active in the community. People that have paid 5 figures. The questions that come up from the business owners in that community are very different in quality, in just there's a noticeable difference there than people who maybe didn't have a phone sales call in a mid-range sales conversation. There's also a noticeable difference with the people in the earlier community. So it's interesting that I mentioned that because there was a company who they did a kind of a free challenge. So an opportunity for people to come on, watch some videos live, interact with them. It was very, there was a very gamified business approach. And I'm like, I have no time for this. 2-3 hour lives where you're interacting. I got to build my business. I got no time for that. So interestingly enough, though, I would play some of the content back and I would skip ahead to where the content was. And the content in a 2 or 3 hour live was only 10 or 20 minutes. I'm like, well, shoot. Okay. I got the content here. Perfect. And some of the other content that they were putting in there is stuff that I've already handled, already learned, right? So, even within that 10 or 20 minute window. So if it was a half hour content, there might have been 20 minutes of ways of thinking about things. And I'm like, well, okay, except that's kind of my business. So it's all right, I already do it. And then 10 minutes of actual tangible content. Well, in the course of a multi-hour live, look, I'm using that as a way to figure out from a fractal perspective what your higher end offers are going to be. And they had made a higher end offer, a 4-figure offer, and I didn't buy it. And I was debating, but I'm like, this doesn't make any sense because I can already see how they teach. Now, what if they teach a totally different way in the course? Well, then they should teach that way in their lives. Because I also have a few of their lower priced courses. I think there was a course that was an hour or 2 long, maybe even longer, that was talking about niching in a particular media. And at the end of it, it was basically summed up. It was basically pick a niche. It was just pick one. There was less structure to how you even do it. They're talking a lot about why you need one. Okay, fine. But if it's a course, you should be giving how. You should be explaining steps. You should have worksheets that are actually able to move people through a process. And I've taken programs where worksheets are just documenting some of the things in the video. Some of my courses, I learn more and more too. Some of my earlier ones, yeah, they're very similar. And the later ones though that I'm putting out are much more focused on the process of taking the customer through that journey. And so some of the ones I'm working on now, that's why they take so long. Because the free stuff or even the front end offers, they can't get into that much depth. And so but what you want to demonstrate is the depth, okay, in the front-end offer. You want to demonstrate that depth so that they know that it's there, so they know you can provide it. And so that's that's why in thinking through the other, if a well-known marketer can say that, hey, the testimonials and who you say these people are going to identify with the person to believe the testimonial. So if all you have is business owners, selling, I don't know, let's just say selling markers, then they're going to think if they don't have a marker business, they can't do it. So you got to put different types of business owners. Or if it's not just for business owners, you gotta find customers who are parents, find customers who are this or that, because within parenting space, find a single mom, a single dad, and whatnot, and find somebody who has boys, somebody has girls, somebody has both, like each variation, because people want to find that exact match to identify with. If that's the case there, then it's the same thing with when I look at somebody's free content and how they teach. And it's like, okay, this is an example of like what I'm going to find your programs. And it was actually, because I had some of the lower end offers. The lower end offers should be an example of an extreme amount of value that you can provide in the higher end offers. And I'm redoing some of things, to actually make that point, because I think even in some of the things that I sell, I had missed the gap there. So I was looking at the example of these three businesses and how different they are, the type of customer they attract. And it's interesting because I know of a business owner who spends a lot of time on figuring out very, very simple details, because those are the details that directly relate to being able to grow into 7-figure businesses. And that's a whole different story, whole different thing. So it's interesting because I was looking at some offers that talked about 6-figure businesses and then a guy who talked about 7-figure businesses. And I'm like, well, wait, what's the difference? And yeah, normally we would look for similarity, but in this concept, I'm going, okay, there is a difference, of course, right? What it takes to build a 6-figure business is different than what it takes to build a 7-figure business. Most of what a 7-figure business is processes and systems. Okay. So in the structure of your 6-figure business, what processes and systems are you putting in place so that you're not the sole person running everything? And so some of what I'm doing here is getting myself out of the things that I don't need to be in, that I could have other people doing, because it's how we're going to get momentum, it's how we're going to get scale, it's how we're going to be able to get to a 7-figure business. Because you're listening to my journey on this podcast. I come from a deep space within, the entrepreneurial space and within the empowerment space. A lot of people know me in the empowerment space, and so recognizing that I want to grow this business to a 7-figure business is a portion of what I had paid these people. But I'm also like, hey, look. I didn't ask them if I was ready for it. I was just saying, here's where I am at. Here's where I'd like to get to. And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, in our program it's structured this way, and this is how you would do it. Of course, their price for moving somebody from a 6-figure business or into a 7-figure business, or even moving somebody from a 5-figure business to a 7-figure business, their price isn't going to be cheap, right? I mean, so that was, meant to be expected. And so in the course of doing all of this, where I just noticed all these different approaches. And so I kind of talked about a number of different concepts in this particular podcast episode. It went a little bit longer than some of my more recent ones. But I think the awareness of what's here. Oh, by the way, when I say 7-figure business, I mean 7-figure repeatable year after year, not just, hey, we hit $1 million one year, but rather structure and also where the business doesn't own my time, right? Because hustle can do it. Well, I mean, hustle can do a lot, but I also want time to be able to travel and do other things. And so when I talk about 7-figure business, there's a very specific type of 7-figure business. And what's interesting is I have to tweak a few things in my current business to be able to set that up. And so I've noticed these things by looking at the way other people operate their businesses and looking at, okay, here's 3 different sales approaches. One, you have outbound callers. The other one, the owner's doing it. The third one, they have inbound call receivers, And so the thinking that it takes to do the third one is vastly different than the thinking of, actually, it's even vastly different than the thinking of the first 2. The second one's closer. The first one, if they buy anything from you and you have their phone number, you would call them. That's what the first one would do. It's not my approach. The second one, it's also teaching people not to put their correct phone number in a sales form. But I like to do it. I like to see what happens and how they treat my phone number, because it tells me a lot about them as a business. It also, am I more hesitant to buy anything else from that first company? Yeah. Am I less hesitant to buy something else from the third company? Yeah. Am I okay to buy something from the second company if they craft an offer that I think fits? Maybe. Still a little bit hesitant, but less hesitant nonetheless. And so the importance of what the third company is doing for me is they're not only explaining some of the intricacies of a 7-figure business, but they're explaining the reason why certain steps are the way they are as you get closer to a 7-figure business. So in other words, here's step A, and what we want to get to is Z. But if they just said, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z, but they didn't explain from A, then you're missing so much. There's so much more momentum that has to kind of be moved in a different direction. Like you have to kind of pivot. Like if you're, I don't know, I forget if it's 1%, 2% or what, flying a plane, landing in Hawaii, if you're like 1% off, you land in the Pacific Ocean. So, if what we're doing is we're saying we need to get to Z, we have to backtrack to what needs to happen now from where we are. So maybe it's not even A. Maybe I go, well, you know what? I already have a business that's in your A through Z. Maybe it's at H. And they go, well, okay. Then here's what we need to do, to actually get through Z. Or maybe it's not even at H. Maybe it's on a different track. Maybe instead of at H, right, it's at the number 12 and it needs to get to the number 100. And they're like, well, you're not even going to get to 100. You have to move from numbers over to letters. They're saying you got to get on the right track first. So your trajectory is to the number 100, but you told me you actually want to get to the letter Z. And I'm like, oh, good point. Right? Now, this didn't actually happen, but what that company does, though, is they kind of look at that, and that's why they're able to backtrack. So if I say, hey, I'm at, number 12, and I want to get to the letter Z, they would say, well, you actually need to get onto the letter track first and probably get up to about H, and then your trajectory is going to be set to get to Z. And they explain why, and they explain so, the approach that's taken there, right? Because the interesting thing is the amount of time and effort and money that it's going to take to get to my first 7-figure business. It'll be less getting to multiple 7-figure businesses. Okay, it'll be less, and so I don't know as much about you listening to this as you probably know about me. Whether you're at a 4-figure business, a 5-figure business, a 6-figure business, or 7-figure business. Chances are my listeners are not 7-figure business owners because I don't have a 7-figure business right now. But I will. And at that point, it's probably going to be more 6-figure business owners wanting to make a 7-figure business, or 5-figure business owners that want to make a 6-figure business in such a way that it sets them up for a 7-figure business, right? So even that awareness of the podcast, I don't really promote the podcast. I just make the episodes. I really don't promote it. So, it's a portion of the content that I make, but in the grand scheme of things, it's meant to just capture a ton of talking points, because then if a client has a particular problem, or if somebody calls and wants to know details on something, and I'm like, you know what? I actually made a whole podcast on that. And I can point them to kind of free content that's already out there to help solve their particular problem. And like I said, if I can help one person with one problem, and that's all the whole series of episodes does, then it was worth it. So if you got one thing from, listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show, then sweet. It was all worth it. And that just helps me keep going. And so when I notice these themes, these patterns, these opportunities, that's what prompts me then to, okay, make another episode. And this one, I think, went longer because, well, it had to. Could it have been broken up into about 3 or 4 different episodes? Probably. But sometimes I like doing series, and I've done a few of them. But I really think the lessons in this experience, and if I could summarize, the last 45 minutes, it was basically to think about the implications that your business processes have with your brand and also with the type of customer that you want to attract. And would your customer, for example, be able to afford the thing you're offering? Would your customer be motivated to find a solution to be able to afford the thing you're offering? Even though company number 3's price point was higher than company number 2, from one offer, it was lower than the one offer I got from company number 3 was lower than company number 2's higher end offer. So it was in the middle there. I didn't go with the cheaper option. I went with the option that I knew that was going to help me for my particular pain points. I'm a customer of things just like you are. Okay, so as business owners, it dawned on me, I had to look at it and I go, okay, what did I learn from interacting with each of these 3 companies? And what does that mean for my business? Right? What does that mean for my business? And that's the lesson. And then I take that lesson and turn that into an episode and share that with you. And I like to give it the backstory on it as well, a little bit, to some degree. Right? So anyway, I hope that helps. I really do. I think the greater precision you have on the type of customer that you want to attract, the easier it becomes in growing your business. Plus, and in the offer that you make. Because again, your guarantee, your pricing, the actual deliverables, all of that gets factored into what makes the offer. Okay, so your product or service is not an offer. Your product or service is a product or service. Right. And so it comes down to all of these other details. I mean, the fact that I was, talking to company number 2 and yeah, it was his cheaper end offer. It came off like it was just a really expensive course. And instead of something that was going to add a crap ton of value to my business. And it also had I had to keep paying a 4-figure amount to stay in the program and get help on calls that I wasn't even going to be able to attend. So it just didn't even match. Like it didn't. Sometimes people think, well, I'm going to offer group calls. Yeah, except if the person that you're talking to can't attend those group calls. See, this is what I mean. The implications to your customer. The implications. So then this other company said, well, we can have some one-on-one calls. Because see, what does every customer think? That their problems are unique. So you might as well solve it with some one-on-one calls. You might as well solve it, so like in certain ways, like if that's what your customer thinks. So it's being aware and not just looking at the economics or the business economics of running an offer a particular way, but really understanding the type of customer that you want to attract. Because the first business probably thought that it's like, okay, just somebody who bought the lower end offer, not really serious about something. Fine. They might have thought that. They might have thought, well, whatever, it factors into our metrics. And they didn't think anything of it. The second company, I think he thought I was part of his ideal market, but it did, there was other reasons why it didn't go through, and he probably couldn't articulate those reasons because he didn't have enough time with me. Okay. The third company took the time with me and also knew that what they offer would actually help. And that's why they got the business, and so thinking through at the awareness of what it takes to allow somebody who maybe has never even talked to you, if they've bought just some sort of front end offer that you have, you know, to actually doing business with you and paying you more money. You know, I have to actually develop even more front end offers, and that's what I'm working on now, because even my astrology readings, which are 3 figures, are too much, I believe, for people who don't know me that well. And it's like, okay, so, you know, making some relatively inexpensive but heavily packed with content front-end offers that solve particular problems is what's going to help move the needle on that one. Because you can always go, what I like to think about is it's like you kind of effectively move closer to the customer. So if the customer didn't take the leap to a particular offer, you can move an offer closer to them. Okay, which could be a whole nother podcast on that. You know, but effectively, right? If you know, if they're not going to pay $300 for a reading, will they pay, you know, $5 to $7 for something else? You know, I have my Mercury retrograde program. I think it was listed for $47. I was testing out an exit pop on it, meaning when somebody tried to exit the page, offer it to them for $7, see if they buy it, you know, and just to see if they buy it at a lower price point, like to test the offer at a lower price point. I even put a link on there that offered it for $27 at the bottom of the page. And I don't think anybody actually took it up on that, which tells me they might not even be reading the sales copy. But I put a legit timer such that for a given customer, they only see the exit pop once. If they want it for $7, they have to buy it for $7. And I just figured, all right, I'm going to test it. Do they even want this offer? All right. And I mean, is it worth $47? Heck yeah. Spent a lot of time on that program. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's worth more than that. You know, but that's an example. So even maybe 47 wasn't enough moving the needle. And it's not just moving price down, but moving precision on where the customer's at. That's what I mean. You can make an offer closer to where the customer's at. So some of the offers that I'm working on now are, well, I'm not going to tell you what they are yet, but they're much more into where the customer's at in their journey of building a business, and being able to, at a lower price point, match where they're at in their business, okay, to be able to solve where they're at in the business and move them closer to where I need them to be to become my customer on the back end, right? So basically, a filtering process. Let's solve the customer's problem. You know, and you know, let's help cultivate them into who I want to make sure that they are or they aren't, in order to be able to do business with me further. The process will filter them out. You know, and so there's a lot to do. So you can always move an offer closer to where the customer's at. You can always have front end offers that meet the customer where they're at, and then move them even into the same back-end offers if your back-end offers solve multiple problems, right? Your back-end offers can solve one big thing, but that way that thing manifests for different people could be different, okay? So, I mean, maybe your back-end offer, let's say you help couples with communication in a relationship. Well, you could help them. You can look at, okay, what are different problems of communication, examples of communication, and then help them solve those problems one at a time. Like, take one problem and solve it with a front-end offer. Well, it's like, okay, well, do you have any of these other problems? Well, and then here, schedule a call and let's talk about how we can help you, right? So there's ways of doing that, moving closer to the problem. I think some, let's see, in the relationship space, I'm trying to remember some of the marketing that I've seen, but I vaguely remember some being around, okay, how do you know, like, it's so weird, because it's like, okay, should we get a divorce? There was like that one. But then there was also like, how do you know if your partner's thinking about a divorce? I'm like, well, that's an interesting one, slightly different of a position. Then there's ones like that target one specific side of a relationship in particular types of relationships. So they might target a husband who's like, okay, how do you know if your wife is thinking about? And then they use words like leaving you instead of divorce, because a guy whose wife leaves him can be a little bit stronger, right? So you can you with precision, and this is why I said there are some marketers that will spend weeks on simple things like that, because that the 1 or 2%, just like 1 or 2% can have a plane land in the Pacific Ocean if it's aiming for Hawaii, 1 or 2% can exponentially change your business, right? And so early on, that 1 or 2% early on, and that's why getting these things right is key. But again, marketing is a process. And so paying attention to what the numbers are showing, paying attention to, okay, do people even want what it is that you're selling? Are there different ways of positioning it? And why did I pick Mercury retrograde? Well, shoot, I thought people would want to know how to use Mercury retrograde, instead of avoiding contracts. Well, how do you sign contracts during retrograde? But I put all that stuff. I mean, I didn't put that directly because that you need legal counsel, but I put things to be aware of. And it's like, I put that stuff in the program, and it's like, well, I could have done one. If I worked with legal counsel, I could have done one on signing contracts during retrograde, and that could have been, say, a $4 course or a $7 course or something. Okay, so even moving the needle closer, moving the offer closer to where they're at. What problem are they facing? The greater that pain point is for them, and the more immediate the need is for that solution, the more precise you're gonna get the match there on where the customer's at. So we talked a lot. I haven't done an hour-long episode in a little while, probably near the beginning. But this is one that, if you understand these concepts, that it really can help you to exponentially grow your business. Because what you're doing, now remember, exponentially, what you're doing is at early on, the line doesn't move all that much, right? And then it exponentially grows. And versus a linear line, which is going to surpass the exponential line for quite some time until the exponential line makes the turn and then goes exponential. Okay, and so what we're talking about here is the importance of things you can do to build that exponential line. I don't really care about certain metrics, and I care about other metrics. And in order to make sure, am I actually moving up that exponential curve? Because people are going to look at me as an overnight success at some point. There'll be more people that once they catch on to what I've been doing, and they're going to say, you became an overnight success. Well, yeah, but probably not, because it took 10 to 20 years to do it. Okay, and does it have to take that long? No, but I know where I started. Okay, and so it's going to take that, it's basically taking that long for me. But it's okay, because everybody has their own journey. And so it's understanding the exponential curve. It's just like, people will do financial investments. I'm not a financial advisor, so if you're interested in financial investments, this is not investment advice. Just talk to financial planners and advisors and that type of thing. It's just people that do financial investments, that invest in financial products. They invest early. The earlier they invest in anticipation of, let's say they're investing for retirement. You got, 50 years, 40 to 60 years, right, of time there. If you're investing to send a kid to college, you got 18 years there. Okay, well, that's still 10 to 20, right? So, you're recognizing what the exponential is going to do, and where you'll be at that time period. Okay, so anyway, I hope that was helpful, and as we continue this journey, as we begin to unpack some of these thoughts, just really consider how you can apply these things for your business. And I will continue to do my best to share them. And, thanks for taking the time, to listen to this one. I do appreciate you. And I really do hope that this helps your business grow. And with that, aloha a hui ho. I'll talk with you again soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show.